So I don't know if you guys saw this. Earlier on Thursday morning, Kyle Long tweeted out a little PSA talking about one of his friends who I hope was not our friend Brandon Wolf. But he said, hey, my friend stepped on a snake this morning while playing golf, so be careful, which is nice. That's a good rule of thumb, especially this time of year. And Mitchell Schwartz, the Kansas City Chiefs tackle, said, hey, tell Nick Foles I said hey. Said hi, whatever. And the internet started losing its mind, thinking about, hey, these guys were teammates in 2016. Brandon Shagrew himself was like trying to get to the backstory. Like, what is this? What is this shade? And I'm like, you guys, this isn't some unsolvable puzzle. Okay. There's not any heat. Actually, I think Mitchell was being very complimentary to Nick Foles, if you get my drift. And if you don't, I'm not going to explain it anymore because this is a family show. And speaking of which, Sammy, why don't we start the show?
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast with Adam Ray.
Trying to cut it back. Justin Fields making magic happen. There goes Fields. Touchdown.
The sickest Chicago Bears and fantasy football podcast. Sports entertainment like no other. It's gonna be sick.
Welcome to The Sick Podcast with Adam Rank. It is me, Adam Rank, and we've got a great show for you tonight. Jack Wright will be joining us here momentarily, and I'm fighting against all hope to not call him Jack Wagner, which I've been calling him in my, like, listen, I've already established the fact that I'm getting everybody's name wrong. I'm happy that I got Shagrew correct earlier, but we're going to bring out Jack Wright of the Bear Down Chicago pod here in just a moment, because first, I wanted to take this opportunity to address something that has been in the news recently, and that is the fact that Michael Florio doesn't know what he's talking about. I really don't understand, other than the fact that we have way too much time on our hands between the end of the NFL season and the NFL draft. We should really start having the draft like the week after the Super Bowl, because I am getting sick and tired of people with too much time on their hands spinning narratives that make absolutely no sense. Michael Florio of Pro Football Talk came out and said that the Bears are sabotaging this season to expose Justin Fields in order to move on, which is some of the most ridiculous nonsense I have ever heard in my life, because during the entire process leading up to during the search for the general manager and hiring a head coach, they left it open. They told whomever was interviewing, like, if you don't think that Justin Fields is the guy, let us know, and we could possibly work around that. So if Ryan Poles had felt that Justin Fields is not the dude or whatever, they would have listened to him and perhaps made a move or done something like that. But no, I think Ryan Poles, Matt Eberflus came out recently, said that Justin Fields is going to pick up this offense and do very well. The fact that, I don't know, and I get it, like we're all trying to produce content during kind of a dead time during the NFL season. I was watching Good Morning Football on Thursday, and they were trying to do debates between Sonic the Hedgehog and Super Mario. Like, I get that it's a tough time for content creators, but it also does not give you license to go out there and just make stuff up. It's absolutely ridiculous, and I am very tired of it. And at some point, can you just move on to some other teams? Like, there's plenty of other things going on in the NFL. You don't need to be drumming up these sort of outlandish scenarios when it comes to Justin Fields. Now, you know what? To help break that down, we're going to be welcoming our guest for today. He's part of that all-new Bear Down Chicago pod. We had Patrick on Tuesday night for Take It to the Rank, which I hope, thanks to everybody who joined us there that night. It was a fun show. This should be fun too. Please welcome to the show, Jack Wright. Jack.
Hey, Adam, how are you?
What's going on? I got your name correct, right?
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I'm a big fan of the ACC, that Tahoe Golf Challenge every August, like right before the football season starts. And Jack Wagner, the actor, is always in the mix for that. And I don't know why. I just could not. And I checked right before we started the show. I'm like, I know it's not Jack Wagner. Made sure I got it correct. But how are you? You good?
Doing really well. How about you? You totally nailed it with the Florio thing. I don't understand why we just try to go for clickbait all the time, why we try to just attempt to get people to watch based on completely unwarranted takes. Like you, I'm wary of that. It's not.
I mean, you guys, listen, you guys are starting a new podcast and you understand the challenges that are going to be in front of you, especially during some dead parts of the season. But I don't understand what people were watching last year with Justin Fields, where you would automatically write him off. I think that we're too quick nowadays to just dismiss quarterbacks. What was your read on Justin Fields' rookie season?
I think I agree with you. It's too early to tell. There's a lot of factors. I don't know how you properly assess JF1 in his first season in the lack of scheme and game planning and structure and offensive line and wide receivers who couldn't gain any separation. How exactly do you properly assess a quarterback in that situation? The turnovers, that's a concern. It's funny that you mentioned this because our pod, the Bear Down Chicago podcast, our thread went back and forth last night on this after Florio dropped what he dropped. And I'm in the camp that we need to give him more time. I think he's got a great skill set. I think he's super athletic. I think he's got a fantastic arm. He's shown he can do it in play action. He's shown he can be a leader. I would love to see what he can do with a little bit of an offensive line, some talent around him, and a scheme that makes some stinking sense for a change.
Yeah. Wait, who is not in the camp of that Justin Fields is not good? Let's call out who that person is.
All right. So we got a great crew, right? Ryan Dangle. You mentioned Brendan Shagru. You had Shells on, Patrick Sheldon the other day, Logan Bradley. So Ryan Dangle and Logan Bradley, I think, were on the side of I'm the most uncertain about Justin Fields. Not writing him off. That's, I think, truly the beauty of our pod is that pretty rational guys who are thoughtful. We don't like this polarization any more than you do. The beauty is in the gray area, so those guys, I think, were more concerned, especially Ryan, concerned about the turnovers, which I think is a valid concern.
That's fine.
I think I was more, Patrick was way over on the, no way. We can't compare him to Mitch. We can't really use that first season as a test case. No way should we be writing this guy off. He still could be our franchise quarterback. That's where I tend to be. My concerns are way fewer than still my hopefulness. And I think I still think there's a high ceiling on the guy. I really do.
Yeah, there really is. And it's fair. The intercept or the turnovers, getting the ball knocked out of your hand. That's something that you need to work on, but it's also one of the most correctable things, because I feel like when you had Mitch Trubisky, there were things about, and I'm hopeful, and I think that he's going to do very well in Pittsburgh, but there are certain things that Mitch lacked that you cannot teach. Like there's the things that, and it's places where Justin really excels. And you mentioned the leadership. It has been a refreshing change of pace to see a quarterback come in here and just command the room. And when you think about the fact that he was not given the team, he was not allowed to take reps with the first team, the fact that he was still able to go out there and exhibit all those leadership qualities, I think that already puts him ahead. And if the biggest thing is that he needs to learn how to hold on to protect the football better, I think that's more of a correctable thing than some of the other stuff that could be a huge problem.
I would tend to agree with you. And I think if you want to look even at something tangible, let's talk accuracy. The ball placement from JF1 in certain instances is, I think, not even in the same ballpark when it came to Mitch. There were times where we just were like, who is he throwing that to? And I'm not trying to dog Mitch. I think he was equally affected by a really terrible situation. And I hope he does great. I really do. But I do think, that there is an accuracy element with JF1 that is elite, that you see in some of the best, greatest quarterbacks out there. I mean, the whole thing, we got to see what we've got. I mean, this is where it starts. I heard you say the other day, I don't care about, I think it was something to the effect of, we don't care about all the other position groups. I just want an offense. And I'm with, if I'm correctly characterizing what you said.
Absolutely what I said. Yeah.
I mean, we have it's been anemic, right? For most of our lifetimes, and really since, 85. And I think you turn to other channels and you see these prolific offenses, and you wonder if the team that you're rooting for is even in the same league.
Yeah.
And so we've got to figure out if we've got the quarterback right. And if we don't, then we've got to move on. But this franchise is starving for an elite game-changing franchise quarterback. And the focus, in my opinion, should be, is he the guy or isn't he? We definitely need to give him at least another year.
Oh, 100%. And it's interesting too. Like if an alien came to Earth and you showed him just the Cleveland Browns game, I think that alien would say, why the hell did they not put game plan to his strengths? No, but it is the thing about like, I think it's going to be night and day. And I when you talk about not putting him in a position to succeed, not surrounding him with enough talent, I think that people are underestimating what a difference it's going to make to have an offense that's competent, to have play callers that kind of know what they're doing. And I don't want to get my hopes up, because it seemed like in the Matt Nagy era, every year, that first game of every season, I was like, well, now we're going to see it. Now it's all going to come together. Going from 2018 to 2019, you're like, they're going to blow doors off this place. You know, they're going to go nuts. And you see that first game, and it's the 100th season of the NFL, and you're like, oh, now we're going to see a competent Mitch Trubisky, and it was terrible. Punting, like it was awful. And you're like, I just want to turn on the TV week one, and I'll probably build it up. I'm actually not going to build it up as much as I normally would, but I think that's a huge thing. And I think it's disingenuous to look at that and not recognize that, like, well, they're just trying to build a team that's going to compete for a generation, not necessarily for week one of the 2022 season.
Right. I don't know what is it that Florio or others that are ripping Poles would expect. I don't think we want to see Poles taking his shot, like looking for, some sort of an elite, trade or, an elite sign or something like that. That's not the position that we're in. He's got to walk that fine line, I think, of this teardown and bringing in these guys with these 1 or 2 year contracts that are viable, and continue to try to clear up some cap space and have more and more draft picks, but also walk that line where we can have enough around Justin Fields to see what we have. But he's not in a position to go big by any means. So I don't think that you can look at what Poles has done and then jump to the conclusion of, oh, they're not behind Justin Fields. I think they are behind Justin Fields. And because they are behind Justin Fields, they're not out there sticking their necks out, doing stupid things and like big moves and making their shots. I feel like it's a calculated effort to go for 2023. And I'm on board. I want to see it.
And I believe that our friends down in Duval County, who I feel a lot of commiseration with our friends who root for the Jacksonville Jaguars, they're dealing with it the other way. Like they have overspent on a lot of talent, but now they're getting ripped like, oh, look at all the money that you're paying Christian Kirk. So it really shows you, and it illustrates that no matter what they would have done, they would have found a way to tear down this team. I mean, the Jags went out a different way. They went out there and they got a Super Bowl winning coach. They spent $96 million or whatever it was on Christian Kirk, and they're being criticized for like, why are you bringing in a retread? Why are you spending all this money on a pedestrian receiver? It's like, these guys cannot win whatever they're doing. I think of the two formulas that we're seeing playing out, and I hope it works for Jacksonville, but of the two formulas that we're seeing playing out, I would rather be taking the Chicago Bears approach than be using the Jacksonville model.
Do you think that Jacksonville model is similar to what Pace was doing? Big names, big signings, but really we don't have a core structure, so we can't really be any good. Is Jacksonville similar in that way, do you think?
I mean, Trent Baalke and Ryan Pace seem to be very similar. And Trent Baalke is already starting to go crazy where he doesn't want to take Aiden Hutchinson. And he's like, well, like, Trayvon looks like he could be the next Aldon Smith. You're like, oh, please don't do this. Like, you guys, like, do you want to draft first overall every year? You have a Joey Bosa-like player over like a Leonard Floyd type. Like, as much as he could be Aldon Smith, he could easily be Leonard Floyd. Now, Leonard Floyd, of course, has been playing very well with the LA Rams, which will happen when you play opposite of, Aaron Donald. But at the same time, it's like, oh my gosh, don't do this. So I'm very comfortable with our approach. I'm very comfortable being, I think, too, like I have two kids who approach things different ways. And one of them is more thoughtful and will think things through. And the other one's like, snap decisions and off and running. So I think that the approach that we're taking is probably the correct one. I do want to ask, though, speaking of the wide receiver position, Darnell Mooney, we have this conversation a lot where people ask, is he a number one? And I have said this on the show that I think that when people say, is he a number one, they're thinking of Madden, create a receiver mode. He's got to be 6'4", 220. He's got to have, all these attributes. But I don't think that's necessarily the case anymore in the modern NFL. How do you feel about Darnell Mooney? And do you think he can be a number one receiver for this team?
That's a great question. I do like him a lot, but I have some strong opinions on this. I think, in my opinion, the Chicago Bears haven't had an elite game-changing end zone hunter on offense really since '85. There's some guys in the conversation for sure. I suppose Brandon Marshall, Curtis Conway, Thomas Jones, Forte. There are some good players in that mix, but I would like to see us have that tall, rangy perimeter receiver that is in the same conversation as Devontae Adams, as D-Hop. And so I think you take two things into consideration here. One, that Bears fans really have to try to put everything that they believe in into the players, because there is no real structural background. Whereas the Patriots, they're kind of interchanging players because they've got an amazing structural background. Yeah, so I feel like there's really Bears goggles for sure. We have a tendency to look at players and think that they're better than they are, to be quite honest. And this is not me. I'm not digging on Mooney. I do think he's a quality receiver. I think he looks like a great slot. He's got great, he makes separation. He's got really great hands. He's tough, but not a number one. I mean, I think that the Bears should be able to have nice things too, Adam, right? Like, why can't we have nice things? When you look at the elite players that we've seen come through all around the league, why is it that we can't name very many Bears players that are in that group of, do you know what I'm saying? Like, just blow the top off. Like, change the game in a play, right? Throw the ball up and watch him go up and get it. I don't think that's Mooney. So could he be a one? Yes. Would I like him to be a one? That's not who I would choose. And again, I'm not saying that's somebody in this year's draft necessarily, but I'm thinking, again, you bide your time, and maybe that's a 2023 guy, either through a trade or through a draft. I'm not sure, but that's who I want to see at number one, Adam, so badly. Yeah.
Well, I mean, and there's also a couple of guys out there. OBJ has not signed yet, to my knowledge. I don't know. I should probably pay. It's only my job. I should pay closer to that. But Julio is out there, which it's interesting with Julio when you talk about touchdown hunter. Like, that's not Julio. That's never been his game.
No.
But would you like to see a player like that? Or do you think that, you know what, we haven't overpaid for veterans now? Why do that? Or what do you think?
I took a look at the free agent list the other day, and I don't know, I feel like they're more our age, Adam, than they are. Yeah. There's like 30 plus or minus 2. And that's not to say that there aren't some viable opportunities out there, but a lot of 36-year-olds, 32-year-olds, 30-year-olds, and that includes the wide receivers. Mm-hmm. Going back to our earlier discussion, I don't think that's the direction that we're going in right now. I don't think we're not the White Sox who are like trying to get big names to like piecemeal, placate, the fan base, or even the Cubs did that for a while, right? Just try to get some names. Guys that were maybe retreads, guys that really had seen the best of their days. Long story short, I would rather not see us go in that direction. We've taken the time to free up cap space. We've got a lot of it going into 2023. I don't see the benefit of someone like Julio Jones, for instance, on the roster, or OBJ. Personally, what do you think?
OBJ, I would probably be a little bit more open to, because I think that he is one of the elite level players in the NFL. I think he's a game changer. And I think as great as Cooper Kupp was last year, and that's kind of like when I'm talking about Darnell Mooney and I look at the production of Cooper Kupp. I'm like, yeah, like Cooper Kupp is not how you would draw up an elite level wide receiver. You would think of guys like Devontae Adams, taller guys, Randy Moss, those kind of players. Not that Cooper Kupp's a small guy, but it's kind of, he was so good. He was so productive. And I think that Darnell Mooney could have that kind of production. But you did see that when OBJ joined the team, like he was the most important guy. Like he was really the one that was really like almost the linchpin for that. And they almost couldn't overcome it in the Super Bowl, but they eventually did. They eventually found Cooper Kupp in the end zone a couple of times. I just think that I agree with you. I guess I'm having it both ways of like, I think that Darnell Mooney can give wide receiver one production, but I also think that having a guy like OBJ doesn't necessarily have to be him. And he's coming off an injury. And it's one of those things too, is like, we don't really need to spend on that. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like that, yes. Like we bought a used, like, I don't know, like we bought a used car. We don't need to buy all the protection that you normally would when you buy a brand new car. And I think that, when you look at some of the guys who could be available in the draft this year now, as my mock draft with a twist is hitting the NFL.com pages right now, I have so many receivers flying off the board. And it's not a prediction piece, but it's kind of how I would approach the draft. And I'm like, there's a lot of teams that need wide receiver. Even the team like Kansas City has back-to-back picks. And if they went Sky Moore and Christian Watson, am I saying that correct?
Yes.
That's one I've been getting wrong all year.
You got it.
I've been calling him Watkins, I think. Because it's Sammy Watkins. I get confused easily. I'm an old man.
I do too.
Listen, I got small children who I blame everything on. If you want me to go over the cast of Encanto or Turning Red, I could do that. But Christian Watkins, I get stumbled. But like a team like them could go 2 wide receivers or anything crazy like that. So it's so tough of what you want to do at the position now. And I think that Bears fans have also, it's funny how Twitter works and social media works. Like, I think if George Pickens does not end up as a member of the Chicago Bears, the internet community is going to collapse upon itself like a black hole. Are you looking at any guys in the draft who you're like, this has got to be a guy that we need to get?
It's another great question. And I've done some mocks and some simulations too. And I think you presented the conundrum really well, because here's what I think. I think when it comes to the Bears 2 second-round picks, if there isn't a guy that's high on their board, either a wide receiver, a corner, or a wide receiver, a corner, or an offensive lineman,
yeah,
I think they should trade one of those 2 picks.
Same, absolutely.
And I don't know about how your simulations have worked out, but in a lot of the mocks that I ran, those top tier, early second round offensive linemen, wide receivers, and in corners, they weren't there. And I would rather see the Bears trade and see if they can get some picks in future years, some second, third, fourth rounders, than to try to force a pick.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if we think that the wide receiver pool is deep, I would only like to see them choose a Pickens if they firmly believe that he can be their X, as we just talked about. If they've looked at him, assessed him, his speed, his strength, his 40, his hands, ability to go up and get the ball, that's the only way I think you go big on wide receiver with that pick. Otherwise, if one of your top tier offensive linemen are there, then you go there without a doubt. And it looks like in some of my mocks, it looks like maybe the cornerback Petrie would be there. Again, as well as I do, it depends on the runs that occur. Depends on the trades that are made, and it's fluid and flexible. So, I would like to see them either use that pick, in the second round to get a top tier guy that they think will be a part of the future. And if not, then trade it. What do you think?
100%. We need players is the biggest key. And I think that, again, we were talking about scenarios with Patrick on Tuesday, and I know that Washington has the Huskies have a pair of corners who are going to be possibilities. Well, Kyler more than the other guy, but I think that, again, I know we need a corner per se, but I don't want to do that. Like, no, we're gonna trade down. If the wide receiver that they want, for instance, and I'm not saying this is the guy, but let's say it's Sky Moore, because Sky Moore is one of those players that could go in the first round, he could absolutely drop to 39. There's a wide ranging view of him. So I think that if the guy that you have projected to be there is there, take him. If not, get out of there. Like, we need more players. And then you'll end up finding values, because already the draft process, and this is one of the problems and one of the benefits of having the draft be so long, is that you talk yourself out of players. Like, it's very easy to do. And I think the guy that comes to mind is David Bell out of Purdue. That if we had had the draft right after the Super Bowl, David Bell might have snuck in to the end of the first round. He'd have been a second rounder for sure. Now he's not running as fast. And so now third round. And this is a player that a lot of Bears fans like. And to me, and I'm not trying to say that he's going to be Cooper Kupp. I'm not saying that at all, but it reminds me of the Cooper Kupp situation. Cooper Kupp was a standout at Eastern Washington. Excellent football player. I remember watching him during the year because there was buzz around him during the season. He goes to the Senior Bowl, dominates it. If I'm not mistaken, he was the MVP of the Senior Bowl. Great player. You're like, okay, this is a guy you got to get. Goes to the combine, runs a slow time. Everybody drops off. He goes in the third round. It is such a mistake to look at these guys on a football field and see them excel and see them run past people, but then go to the underwear Olympics and be like, oh, wait, he's not fast. Like, it's game speed. Like track is different from other things. Like it's just, there's so much that goes into it. It's like great base stealers. Like, fast guys aren't necessarily great base stealers if they can't study a pitcher, if they can't, because that was a thing. Like, I was a fast guy. Like, I wasn't a great baseball player, but I was fast and I knew how to read a pitcher. I could sit in the dugout and be like, oh, this is the guy. This is when he's going to home plate. Watch. Do that kind of stuff. There's a lot of nuance, especially in football. And to just erase a guy because he's not reacting to a starter's gun is some of the dumbest stuff possible. So I think that, and I'm not trying to stump for David Bell, but I think that, I don't know, but I think that there's a lot of value still, and we'll end up getting people like that if we're just patient and we move out of it.
I think so too. I think you hit a bit of a personal nerve for me. I was always the guy that won the physical testing, like the 40 and the reps of 225 and the shuttle run. And I remember one of the years that I played, our captain said similarly to you, he said, all right, well, now we've seen who can run around the fastest in their pajamas. Let's go play football. And I was like, hey,
wait a minute.
But I just wanted to, but I think you are correct. Like the eye test, the eye in the sky doesn't lie, right? I mean, There are certain things that translate on the football field that just don't translate in the combine. And I do think it would be remiss to try to just ignore what you see on film, ignore maybe the personal meetings that you have with guys. And then I don't think, is anybody just going off the metrics right now? I mean, I certainly hope that Ryan Poles, I don't think that they will do that.
I think some of the older school guys probably still do that. Like the kind of people that you hear on Sirius. I've been bashing Sirius XM channel 88 just because there's a lot of, I don't know, a lot of terrible takes have been coming out of that station. And I shouldn't because they carry this podcast. So we love Sirius, by the way. Some of your hosts though, step into modern football. That's all I'm saying. I love it. Especially love the fantasy channel. Channel 87, Brad Evans. They do a great job. There's a lot of good
fun buns.
Fun buns. There's a lot of, I love it. So I don't want to seem bashing it, but there's still an old school mentality that puts too much into it's weird because I think there was a push years ago where guys didn't care about the combine. They cared about football players. And then there was a wave that only cared about the combine. And I don't know, hopefully it's going back to the people who are like, hey, let's just draft good football players. And I hope that the Bears do that. I do want to say though, cause we've hinted around some baseball stuff here, and I want to get into this in a moment. Number one, first of all, York, it's so fun because if you ever watch me on the NFL Network, I'll throw out random Illinois towns. My dad's from Sterling, which is closer to Davenport than it is Chicago. My mom is from Oswego, but you were telling me Yorktown, that spoke to you because my uncle operated the grain elevator out there in Yorkville. not many people, even from Illinois, know where that is.
That's what caught my attention. You were on your show, and again, you mentioned, was it, I don't know, Yorkville or Malta or some other tiny little burg out here. Sandwich, yeah. And I was like, wait a minute, how did this dude on the NFL Network just allude to these podunk towns that I live around? And so that I'm like looking for you and saw a little bit about your background in Schaumburg and then the Bears connection. So that, I mean, super cool. And we appreciate you greatly for retweeting our pod and supporting us and having me on and Shells on. It's great to find good people to talk football with. You know, it's such an enjoyable thing, especially like in this knee-jerk society with all this like polarization, just good people that want to talk about sports. But I lived in Oswego for a little while and then live in Yorkville now. And
where did you go to high school?
So I went to Caneland High School.
Okay.
I don't know if you're familiar with that or not. It's a conglomerate of schools. So
we're an Oswego Panthers family. So
you are.
Yeah. My high school, the high school I went to in California was Panthers. So and by the way, I'm starting this fall to teach at Chapman University, which is Panthers. So I'm all Panthers. I should be a Carolina Panthers fan. You know, it's in the blood, as you said. But my mom went to Oswego High School. And she played 4 years of high school basketball. She wore number 77. So, by the way, this is you'll see this every once in a while when I tweet out golf balls. I got personalized golf balls, and they're like, "What number do you want?" And you're just you're so frozen in the moment. Like 34 would have been like an obvious choice, but I'm like 77. So if anybody ever sees that, it's for my mom's high school basketball number. So a very small few of you who watch and listen to the show will now know that and not care. But I'm telling you anyway. Listen, it's fun to talk to somebody who knows these towns. Like Oswego, I was driving through Oswego one time with my cousins, and we were driving. And everybody who's familiar with the area will know where I'm talking about, where the Portillo's is. I think there's an Olive Garden there, and there's a Home Depot. So I'm driving through. And I go, oh, by the way, my mom and your aunt, or my mom and your grandmother, they're cousins. I'm like, yeah, my mom and your grandmother used to work at that Home Depot when they were in high school. And they're like, oh, wow, like that's so cool. And I'm pulling away and I'm like, that the Home Depot was built like 2 years ago. Like, smarten up a little bit. It's obviously not. That has not been around. Like
the gullibility.
The Oswego used to be in the sticks. Like we used to get, like, it was not part of the sprawl, and it was in the sticks. And by the way, I apologize if the person who lives in the old Bell House on Main Street in Oswego, a couple of years ago, there was a creep parked outside checking it out. That was me. Because I was driving by my grandparents' old house. I'm like, oh, you know, where my mom grew up. They're sitting there, and then like some kid comes to the window, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is not normal. So I had to pull away. So I apologize to that family if it was a weird thing. But Oswego, it's kind of a happening town though, right?
It started to be. I drive by the high school every day. I go down the road you're talking about by the Portillo's. The line's always like, you know, all the way around the corner, like what's normal with Portillo's. But you're right. I mean, like roads like Randall Road out here, like when we were growing up, when I was young, though there was farmland on both sides of the road. Yeah. Now it's nothing but, you know, all kind of Dick's Sporting Goods and Chick-fil-A. It's just, it really is. Urban sprawl is a thing. It's happening.
Oh my gosh. It's every one of those anchors with like a Kohl's, a Bed Bath and Beyond, all of a macaroni. I don't know if Macaroni Grill is still a thing, but yeah, the Portillo's is always the one that brings it home. But I do also want to bring up too, going back to baseball, earlier on Thursday, somebody tweeted out, what is the most controversial game that you can remember? I brought up the 2005 ALCS Game 2. I got to be honest, that still hurts me to this day. And I know that you're a White Sox guy. Can we still be friends? I guess I asked if we could still be friends. You guys won, so you have nothing to be. I will still mention, first of all, a number of things at play here. Number one, the Yankees. You knew we were going to end up beating the Yankees. I don't know why they beat us in Game 4. Then we had to rain out because we had to wait to play them in Game 4. And then so we eliminate them in a Game 5 in Anaheim. Alex Rodriguez hits into a double play. And then we have to fly to Chicago. And I think right as we land at Midway, we had to go straight. Like, I think we played game one in the tarmac of Midway. Like, you couldn't give us a break. I feel like we were cheated that whole series, but I'm sure that you see it a different way.
I do, Adam. I mean, we can still be friends because we love baseball, right? I mean, that's the bottom line. I loved you talking about bringing your daughter and her, staying focused the whole game and having patience, at least in that instance. That was great. That was a great anecdote. Even an 8-run inning. I mean, that's something right there.
She was so mad. Like, I think that the people next to us left because she was so distraught. I didn't want to stop her though, because I'm like, I do kind of like how much she loves this, but you have to calm down a bit. She recovered. Yes. She's fine. Yeah. She's wearing her Angels shirt today, getting ready for the game in Texas. So that's fun. But it is fun.
It is, yeah. And I think I when I reached out to you, I said diehard White Sox fan. Like, I used to, when I was probably your daughter's age, I would sleep with my White Sox hat on. My mother would have to take it off my head just to wash it every once in a while because it would get so nasty. We were, at the longest rain delay in the history of the MLB. Texas was in town at the old Comiskey. Nolan Ryan was there. They weren't coming back to town. So they decided to try to wait out the storm hours and hours and hours. I don't even remember like the full, but it was so cool, Adam, because, do you remember Nolan Ryan used to warm up with a football? That's how he, So that was really unique at the time. And just one of the greatest pitchers of all time. So just to be down there in the front row, like chatting with him and the other players, while he's warming up with the football, they never did get the game in, but we went to Polaroid picture day when they had the big collars and the shorts on. And, so in 2005, I think, I was near tears. My son had just been born. The White Sox won. We're long suffering fans here in Chicago. So
you're old. I didn't know you were old enough to remember old Comiskey. I want you to verify this. So my family, Northsiders, although I don't know why. Well, I mean, Schaumburg, obviously. I don't know if Yorkville counts as like Northsider or not, and Newark and all those places. But even though my family, they were Bears fans, because remember the Cardinals played. See, I should ask you, why don't you have loyalty to the Cardinals then? Why aren't you a Cardinals fan? You Southsider sitting there in Comiskey Park. You should be talking about Charlie Trippy and Marshall Goldberg. I'm kidding.
Well, the Cardinals are probably my favorite National League team, especially because they're the Cubs' biggest rival. Oh, I'm sorry.
Team.
Okay, gotcha.
The football team that played at Comiskey Park.
Then the Staleys too, I suppose, right? I mean, it was really wild to go back in time and look at that history of the way in which that transitioned, especially with the Cardinals. But the Cardinals right now, if I had their quarterback,
it's funny because, but still, my family always contended. They're like, Comiskey was actually a better ballpark than Wrigley. Like, it's a shock that that's the one. Well, not because. They're not surprised because of the family, but like that was a way better ballpark. Like that was because the upper deck is better. Like the angles, like the outfield upper deck, like it was just like, even my family as Cubs fans were like, Comiskey was a better ballpark. And it was a shame that they actually tore that one down. Although it seems like the new stadium finally looks cool.
It does. I think they got it wrong initially, with the steepness of the upper deck and the seat color, and they kind of just whiffed a little bit, but they've gotten it right so far. I've sat in that stadium in the last few years and just kind of looked around and thought to myself, they're getting everything right. Like, it's great for the kids. It's easy to get in and out of the park. The fireworks, the field itself is beautiful because of the sod father, Roger Bossert. They just need a team. They just that was what they were lacking. And now I think that they've got the team. I'm hugely biased. I like to ruffle the feathers of every Cubs fan on a sunny day at Wrigley. I'm a better Cubs fan than most Cubs fans are. I know who the shortstop is. I know who the starting pitcher was last night, right? I actually know what happens in the game. So I like to kind of dig a little bit at that. But I do think the food is great at Comiskey, the wide open, aisles. You can bring your kids to the fundamentals deck. You can tailgate. It's a great experience. It really is. I love the Sox.
Yeah, it's funny too. But when you look at the old when you look at the old photos of the concourse of the old Comiskey, which is weird, it was so packed to where, like, you look at it from a nostalgic point of view, you're like, oh, why would you ever do that? Although I will say that the barbecue area in left field would have been untouched. Like, that would have been an amazing place to watch a game. But, like, I could see waiting in line for stuff, like how annoying that would be, how cramped it is. Because even up at Angel Stadium, when you get to the upper deck, like that concourse isn't as wide. And you're like, oh, it does kind of suck up here. I can't imagine if it was enclosed in August, like the suffocation you would be going through. Like, yeah, like I could see, but perhaps they could have changed that. But still, it looks like a fun ballpark now, at least.
You're right about that, because I went and watched the Sox play the Yankees last year, and the stadium was as full as I've ever seen it be. And so I had to wait in line a little bit for a beer and a dog and so forth. And I was kind of like, oh, I think I like it better when they play the Angels or Detroit, because I mean, you're in and out.
How dare you?
Was that wrong? Should I have not put them in the same conversation?
That was not cool. I mean, I guess there's probably not a lot of, California people living out in Illinois or in Chicago who would be going to the games. I know that I would, well, see, that was the cool thing too, is like, I grew up outside of Anaheim. So I did get an opportunity. Like, my parents didn't care that I rooted for the Angels. They're like, yeah, whatever. And I eventually won them over because they had to take me to games so that they were basically Angel fans. We never had to do the Jim Belushi taking care of, like, if you remember the movie Taking Care of Business, it was Jim Belushi and it was an Angels Cubs World Series, which my dad was like, this would be a nightmare for me. Like, I don't know what I would do or who I would root for. But I would, but it afforded me the opportunity to where, I was not allowed to root for the Dodgers, which was fine. Like, I don't like the Dodgers anyways. But the Angels, it's my team. It was a little bit of a cheap shot, especially still, because I'm still upset over 2005. We still talk about this here. And by the way, I want to set the record straight. I want to make sure that everybody knows that I don't like AJ Pierzynski, but I do not hold him accountable for what happened. Like, we're like, everybody's like, let's boo A. I'm like, okay, AJ sucks and we don't like him because he's a jerk. But like, it's not his, like, why not run to first base? Like, he's got nothing. Like, he's trying to win a ball game. That's what you should do. If it's close, run. Why are we like Josh Paul? First, throw the ball to first, idiot. Like, throw the ball and it's over. The discussion is over. And so, like, that part of it. And then he became a coach. I'm like, why is he coaching this team? Like, this guy is worse than, like, I don't want to, because Donnie Moore's passed away, so I don't want to bring that up. But I'm like, this is worse. That's worse than Donnie Moore. Like, to me, like, throw the ball to first. But then the thing is that you watch the replay. Doug Eddings signals that he's out. He does the confirmation, like, got him, to where, like, okay, both of you two suck. Doug Eddings sucked. Like, how do you get duped in a playoff game with so much on the line? Yeah. And Josh Paul, same to you. And like, even Kelvin Escobar is pointing, like, throw the ball. Like, he's pointing to Doug Eddings and Doug Eddings is calling him out. But then he's like, then I think he whatever.
I mean, you're right. You nailed it. I mean, is AJ Pierzynski the epitome of the guy that you don't want to play against, but you're super glad he's on your team? 100%. I mean, I think I put Javi Baez in that category. I think there's a handful of guys that if they were on your team, you'd be all for it. And against you, you'd be like, God, I hate that guy.
Oh, 100%. Plenty of players like that. There's I always appreciate those guys. And so I'm thinking of like Dennis Rodman, players like that who, when he played for Detroit, everybody hated him. When he played for your team, oh, this guy's the greatest. Loved what he does. But and I love what you do. And I do want to thank you for joining us here today. And I know that we veered off into a little bit of a baseball talk, but I kept it to the end. So I didn't want Berlissimo to have to listen to the baseball talk right off the top. And I waited and we talked about small town Chicago. So everybody who that spoke to is still with us, and that's fine. And so it's not like we dropped anything. Like we didn't come back and bring in football nuggets, but we covered everything. But I want to thank you for being here. I talked to Patrick. It seems like I'm going to be coming onto your show in a couple of weeks. So look forward to that and picking up these conversations again. But really want to thank you for being a part of the show. And good luck to the Bear Down Chicago pod as you guys start to launch that. I know you guys have been doing podcasts before, but I knew this is a new venture for you. And we're rooting for you. And, good luck.
Thank you so much. Again, incredibly appreciative of you having me on, having Shells on, even just retweeting our show. It really, that all helps so much. And you're right. It is same 5 dudes, just a different podcast. We've got some incredibly loyal listeners. And I think, as I mentioned earlier, the appeal for us is there's this equal parts, just laugh your ass off funny.
Yeah.
And then analysis that's not, hey, we're just trying to get you to click. We're just trying to like make some sort of a hot take. What you see is what you get. We're just like some regular dudes from the Midwest and well, I don't know why Shells is way down there south somewhere, but who love the Bears.
South Carolina.
South Carolina, who absolutely love the Bears. And so we hope that you'll give us a listen. And I look forward to seeing you do your thing this upcoming season. It's going to be so exciting.
I appreciate that. Yeah. Looking forward to the season as well. And looking forward to everything that you guys got going on. So I'll see you in a few weeks. Thanks again for coming on, and we appreciate it. And there he goes. Thanks, buddy. Oh, sorry, I cut him off because that's what I do. The great Jack Wright. Appreciate him being on it, of course. Download that podcast. And I want to tell you, too, like that's one of the things that I love about this Chicago Bears community is I think that there's room for everybody. And that's the cool thing about this is that, you know what? To me, it's kind of like when you go to the Comedy Store and you see all the great names. There's Mark Maron, there's David Spade, there's all these great comics. I have a comic, Robin Tran. Sorry, I couldn't think of her name, but like a lot of great comics you go through and you sit through. There's a lot of variety, a lot of different opinions, a lot of different point of views, and I think that it's great. So one of the great things about this, and so we ask you to download and subscribe to their pod. We hope you've downloaded and subscribed to this one. Thanks for hanging out. By the way, if you could do me a favor, if you enjoyed this show and you enjoyed, it's not always going to be small town Chicago talk, but if you enjoyed the show, just mention Sick right there in the comments. And we thank you, appreciate you. We'll see you on Tuesday nights. We have a guest and I forgot already, but we'll see you Tuesday night for Take It to the Rank. And then next week we're working on, and this is a thing, we're going to try our best to get Michael Florio on the show. I'm not promising anything, but we're doing our best to get him on. So until Tuesday night, I tell you all to bear down. And Sammy, why don't you play us out?
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Adam Rank on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.